Welcome to another edition of the Dementia Care Partner Talk Show. Now, here's dementia care expert Teepa and your host, Greg Phelps.
Hello and welcome to the Dementia Care Partners podcast. My name is Greg Phelps, and joining me once again is dementia care expert Teepa. And Teepa, I was intrigued by a recent article on depression in seniors, which apparently is often misdiagnosed. So does depression automatically go hand in hand with normal aging? Or what do we do if we suspect depression in our loved one?
Ooh, okay. So depression. There are many forms, types, causes, variations on depression. And that's sort of a bigger can of worms than you might think. Because if I've just lost someone or something I really care about, being sad and effectively depressed for a bit as I go through the grieving process is sort of a natural part of living. And we want to be careful that we're not labeling somebody as depressed when what they're actually doing is going through a grieving process. And part of it's going to involve sadness and a sense of loss, and maybe even some frustration and anger that I didn't get to resolve things that I wanted to. And then I have to get through that. Now, it means somebody might need support through that, but that's a very different phenomena than identifying someone as depressed. And it's not situational, it's not resolving. So there are conditions that are psychiatrically or psychological conditions that are based on chemical changes in the brain. They can be misunderstood. They can be misidentified. And they could be actually treated. So for instance, Greg, if I had a hot here, it was very hot, and you weren't in it,
I would think that maybe you needed some poly grip for your dentures.
Yes, and yet what I was actually doing is speaking this clearly, but your hearing, for instance, was not as sharp as it used to be, and you were missing the sharp, fast sounds of consonants. And so what starts to happen is you start tuning out. Listening to me is hard. You get frustrated and angry. You can just say, never mind. Yeah, I'm not going to go. I don't want to go to that meeting. I don't want to do this. And so your opportunities to interact are diminishing, but it also turns out the chemistry in your brain is changing. And evidence is social isolation, lack of interaction is as dangerous for an older adult as smoking a pack of cigarettes a day. So I'm going to pause there for a second because it's like, so risky behavior, hey, but the solution isn't about necessarily depression. What was the actual problem, Greg, that we missed?
Well, you blew that one right by me. It was my hearing aids. I got my little thingies in right now, and I should have twigged that.
So you have hearing issues, and it could be caused by wax buildup in your ears. I mean, this isn't always sometimes it's not even needing hearing aids. It's needing to get your ears cleaned out. Because as we age, things change. But if we assume older adults start to isolate more, they start to be less social. And then, when they can't drive, well, maybe it's just not being able to get places that's causing trouble. So this idea of functional depression versus the diagnosis of depression, really important for us to pick up on, but not turn into a quick fix, but instead get super curious about, I'm starting to notice some things. I'm wondering whether you are first and what might be triggering some of this, and not make assumptions, but maybe it's time to get it looked at. And what happens is people let it go for a long, long time, and could turn out to be dementia. I mean, it might, but we won't know.
So a misdiagnosis in this case could be dangerous because if I'm depressed and you're giving me an antidepressant, there may be some help there. But if I'm not depressed and you're hitting me with antidepressants, could be a sledgehammer and a nail.
Or it could be, what if I have both depression and dementia cooking, and we give an antidepressant, and unfortunately, because the other chemical changes in my brain, it causes me to become distressed. And now I'm identified as being agitated rather than just depressed. I'm having episodes of both, or it's not enough because the isolation that I'm starting to want is driven not just by one thing. And so I think this is where that 15 minutes office visit with a physician may not be enough to actually sort out and work through what might be the parts of this that we should take a look at environmentally, programmatically, support wise, that could really shift ground and might make a huge difference in more than one person's life.
So start at the beginning. Don't go to third base. Don't try and make a home run. Work your way around the bases, because it sounds to me like there's no shortcuts.
I think every time we take a shortcut, we take a risk. And we're taking a risk with someone we care about, ourselves, people in our world. And I think it's time to try to stop the shortcuts and really get curious. This is complicated. I wish it weren't, but the reality is it's a little complicated. But if I could figure it out early on and start making some adjustments when it's just a little bit of adjusting, boy, that can make a big difference. And if I'm starting to notice things, not get accusatory, but get curious, because I think curiosity goes a long way toward figuring things out.
Speaking of curious, is your website fairly easy to navigate around so that people can drop in there? I've been to some websites where you just go, oh, that was an hour wasted.
Yeah, we try really hard to make sure that we are trying to be responsive to what you've asked about, but it gets tricky because this thing is a great big ballpark. And there are lots of sports that get played at this ballpark. And some of it's not even dementia, as I said. So we recognize the value of your brain changed enough that you got curious. Let's respond to your curiosity. Let's not react to it. Let's respond and see if from the very beginning we can put you on a pathway that actually matches your need rather than let you stumble around there for a bit. Because, I mean, frankly, there is a lot that we could offer you, but we need to do it in bite-sized pieces or we might just choke you, time-wise or otherwise.
Teepa, thank you very much.
Thank you, Greg.
You've been listening to the Dementia Care Partners podcast, brought to you by Positive Approach to Care. For more information, go to teepasnow.com.